Dutch dialects are primarily the dialects that are both cognate with the Dutch language and are spoken in the same language area as the Dutch standard language. Dutch dialects are remarkably diverse and are found in the Netherlands and northern Belgium. The province of Friesland is bilingual. The West Frisian language, distinct from Dutch, is spoken here along with Standard Dutch and the Stadsfries dialect. A Frisian standard language has also been developed. First dichotomy. In the east, there is a Dutch Low Saxon dialect area. In Groningen, Drenthe, Overijssel, a major parts of Gelderland, Low Saxon is spoken. The IJssel River roughly forms the linguistic watershed here. The group is not Low Franconian and is very close to neighboring Low German, but it is still regarded as Dutch from the superordination of the Dutch standard language in this area ever the 17th century. It is Dutch synchronically but not diachronically. Extension across the borders. Gronings, spoken in Groningen as well as the closely related varieties in adjacent East Frisia, has been influenced by the Frisian language and takes a special position within the Low Saxon language. South Gelderish is a dialect spoken in Gelderland and in adjacent parts of North Rhine-Westphalia. Brabantian is a dialect spoken in Antwerp, Flemish Brabant and North Brabant. Limburgish is spoken in Limburg as well as in Limburg and extends across the German border. West Flemish is spoken in West Flanders, the western part of Zeelandic Flanders, and historically also in French Flanders. East Flemish is spoken in East Flanders and the eastern part of Zeelandic Flanders. Holland and the Randstad. In Holland, Hollandic is spoken, though the original forms of this dialect are now relatively rare. The urban dialects of the Randstad, which are Hollandic dialects, do not diverge from Standard Dutch very much, but there is a clear difference between the city dialects of Rotterdam, The Hague, Amsterdam or Utrecht. In some rural Hollandic areas, more authentic Hollandic dialects are still being used, especially north of Amsterdam. Another group of dialects based on Hollandic is that spoken in the cities and larger towns of Friesland, where it partially displaced West Frisian in the 16th century and is known as Stadsfries. Minority languages. Limburgish has the status of official regional language in the Netherlands and Germany. It receives protection by Chapter 2 of the European Charter for Regional and Minority Languages. Limburgish has been influenced by the Rhinelandic dialects like the Cologne dialect Kölsch, and has had a somewhat different development since the late Middle Ages. Dutch Low Saxon has also been elevated by the Netherlands to the legal status of streektaal according to the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages. Gronings is very much alive in the province of Groningen, although it is not so popular in the city of the same name. Recent use. Dutch dialects and regional languages are not spoken as often as they used to be. Recent research by Geert Driessen shows that the use of dialects and regional languages among both Dutch adults and youth is in heavy decline. In 1995, 27% of the Dutch adult population spoke a dialect or regional language on a regular basis, while in 2011 this was no more than 11%. In 1995, 12% of the primary school-aged children spoke a dialect or regional language, while in 2011 this had declined to 4%. Of the three officially recognized regional languages, Limburgish is spoken most in Dutch Low Saxon. East Frisian occupies a middle position. In Belgium, however, dialects are very much alive. Many senior citizens there are unable to speak Standard Dutch. Flanders. In Flanders, there are four main dialect groups: West Flemish, including French Flemish in the far north of France; East Flemish, Brabantian, which includes several main dialect branches, including Antwerpian and Limburgish. Some of these dialects, especially West and East Flemish, have incorporated some French loanwords in everyday language. An example is fourchette in various forms, instead of fork. Brussels is especially heavily influenced by French because roughly 85% of the inhabitants of Brussels speak French. The Limburgish in Belgium is closely related to Dutch Limburgish. An oddity of West Flemings is that when they speak the pronunciation of the soft G sound is almost identical to that of the H sound. Thus, the words held and geld sound nearly the same, except that the latter word has a Y, J sound embedded into the soft G. When they speak the local dialect, however, their G is almost the H of the Algemeen Nederlands, and they do not pronounce the H. Some Flemish dialects are so distinct that they might be considered as separate language variants, although the strong significance of language in Belgian politics would prevent the government from classifying them as such. West Flemish in particular has sometimes been considered a distinct variety. Dialect borders of these dialects do not correspond to present political boundaries, but reflect older, medieval divisions. The Brabantian dialect group, for instance, also extends to much of the south of the Netherlands, and so does Limburgish. West Flemish is also spoken in Zeelandic Flanders, and by older people in French Flanders. Sister and daughter languages. Many native speakers of Dutch, both in Belgium and the Netherlands, assume that Afrikaans and West Frisian are deviant dialects of Dutch. In fact, they are separate and different languages, a daughter language and a sister language, respectively. Afrikaans evolved mainly from 17th-century Dutch dialects, but had influences from various other languages in South Africa. However, it is still largely mutually intelligible with Dutch. Frisian evolved from the same West Germanic branch as Anglo-Saxon and is less akin to Dutch. Non-European dialects. Until the early 20th century, variants of Dutch were still spoken by some descendants of Dutch colonies in the United States. New Jersey, in particular, had an active Dutch community with a highly divergent dialect spoken as recently as the 1950s. See Jersey Dutch for more on this dialect. In Pella, Iowa, a derivation of South Gelderish is the Pella Dutch dialect. Despite its name, Pennsylvania Dutch is not a Dutch dialect. It is actually German-based. Plautdietsch is a Low German variety with influences and elements of Dutch. Russia still has some people in small colonies speaking Dutch-based dialects.